This is Mark Sturmer, DOOMeSports, bringing you another vlog for BaseTradeTV, and this one will be brought to you in part by sctoolings.com and now datamindout.com, and with me today is Tom Swanson. How's it going, man? Tell us a little bit about datamindout.com and how this whole website works and functions, and what's your role in the whole organization.
So DataMindOut started, man, it must be, shoot, I can't believe it. It's almost 7 months ago now. And my buddy Jeff and I met through work with iHeartEsports. It was a sticker company that was selling StarCraft 2 stickers, and they made, StarTale stickers, and I think they had some agreement with Root. But when the founder of that left to go pursue some other things, Jeff and I decided that we wanted to start a podcast because business practices in esports we thought could use a little work. I mean, especially having some knowledge about the scene. And then once we sort of vetted out a podcast idea, we decided why not just go ahead and make it the whole website. And that was how DataMindOut was born. And so we started with the basics, blog posts about marketing and business and whatnot. And then we started doing the podcast. It gathered some attention. People seemed to like what we had to say. And from that point on, it was just kind of something we started to do every week. And it became, I guess, almost what's the word I'm looking for? A weekly procedure to do this podcast. And it became something that got us in contact with a lot of people we really like talking to. It started to flesh out our own views of esports business. And a little background on Jeff. He's the founder and president of FantasySports.com, a project which I help him out with, kind of like a fantasy league. Almost, it's the equivalent of fantasy football or fantasy baseball within StarCraft and League of Legends. So, cool. Pretty cool there.
We can bring Jeff on now. I'll give him a call if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome in. It isn't live. We're doing a local recording, but Tom has just eloquently introduced you. But if you'd like to say a few words too as well to the people who will be viewing this VOD, then by all means, tell us a little about your role at datamindout.com. And
sure. So I started with DataMindOut from the beginning with Tom. My side of it is I've been far more focused on helping with the business side of things, trying to do Tom's job on the marketing edge, just doing it from a business perspective. And my background is DataMindOut's my third project in esports. My first one was a company called iHeartEsports, which has now gone away. It was a sticker manufacturer. And then I founded and created Fantasy Sports, which is a fantasy website for competitive video gaming in StarCraft and League of Legends. Tom also works on that with me. And then my background is just in entrepreneurial business work in the for-profit sector, but I also have a background in non-profit and telecommunications fraud.
Very cool.
That's me. And a degree in political science that I've never used.
Very, very interesting. I work in IT security, so that's very, very cool.
I do a far more rudimentary version of what you do. I just track down the thieves and figure out where they live and if they're real or not.
That's fun, though. It's like being
looking at network
spy
security
or something like that.
There's a certain, it's a fun James Bondy thing, and then after enough ex-wives that you just want to claw your eyes out, it kind of loses that appeal.
Yes.
I do marketing all day and then all night.
Well, Tom,
that's my life.
Do you do most of the blog posts on datamindout.com? Because I just stumbled upon it a few days ago. We got in contact here and set up this interview, but I really find that a lot of the blog posts very, very interesting on the site.
I would say 2/3 of it. Occasionally Jeff will write us an article, but Jeff is big on the podcast, which is awesome. Jeff, you owe me an article, by the way.
I owe you, I think, 2 articles, actually, at this point.
Yeah, 2 articles. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so a lot of the posts are me. I enjoy writing. I get a lot out of it, and it's kind of a way for me to sit down and really think about the concepts that I want to bring into businesses in esports. So, and writing gives me more of a stable, kind of slow-moving and thought-out area to say that sort of thing. On air, it's a bit... everything moves so fast, and you want to get from topic to topic, especially with the 30-minute time constraint that we try to put ourselves under. So writing actually gives me time to think about what I want to say.
Nice.
Which is nice.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard to find motivation to write, I find, especially if you're doing blogs or doing a site that has very reliant on articles, but it's always very satisfying once you complete a nice, crisp article. And they are very clean. A lot of the articles have a lot of details in them. They reference a lot of different tools and utilities you can use, different methods and strategies that you can really take advantage of and take your marketing to the next level. So let's get into the first question here. You guys wrote an article called Data Mining on a Budget. And in that you mentioned that the opportunities for amazing data-driven marketing are nearly endless. And in that you go into depth about social media's influence. And we've seen social media play a very large part in a lot of the public perception of esports, especially on not only an individual and personal level, but also from the business perspective. Businesses are very involved in Twitter, in Facebook, and they're even breaking into like Reddit and Reddit StarCraft now. So my question for you is, what emerging social media sites in the spectrum, maybe not necessarily confined to esports, but in the global spectrum, beyond Facebook, beyond Twitter, and beyond Reddit, that you see playing a larger role in 2013 in the esports realm?
So I would like to see a lot more image sharing personally, and what I think is going to blow up. I think we're going to see a lot more community sites similar to how Reddit works, except more of like I know SC2 Armory, or maybe it's just StarCraft Armory. Anyway, the Armory sites, they do a pretty good job of it. It's just a basic forum where people can go to talk, similar to how Reddit works. But I think those are going to see a bit more of a rise as Reddit moves and gets more and more saturated. People are going to look elsewhere for their media consumption. Now, I still think Reddit is going to remain the powerhouse. But I don't really see anybody taking down Reddit, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because it's got everything that you have or that you would want there. It essentially aggregates all content that's in the esports realm, well, at least the StarCraft realm specifically. I know League of Legends has a lot more community sites that are very active. You've got solomid.net, and I think MobileFire is pretty big there as well. But with StarCraft, everything seems to get funneled through Reddit. Even Twitter posts go really, really big on Reddit, which is just very weird to me. But in terms of new and emerging social media I see coming up, I would say community sites on a small level, maybe sites like Pinterest that show more images and that offer a different type of content. But even then, that will probably also show up on Reddit. So I don't really see any other social channels coming up and taking that down. Team Liquid, obviously, from a more game-focused perspective, will remain large. But once again, I don't really think anybody has that much on StarCraft Reddit for the scene in terms of social. It would be nice to see a game breaker that would come in and take all of the people from Reddit and move them towards somewhere where it's a bit easier for a little guy to get a voice. It's one of the big issues. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm on Reddit a lot. I love Reddit. I think it's a great site. But I think it does, especially on the StarCraft Reddit, tend to stifle smaller people and smaller businesses, because if you're not posting something that has, Total Biscuit or Day 9 or some other large personality behind it, you're going to get lackluster results. Especially if you're a business person. So the challenge is finding a way to break that, and right now I just don't think there's a solution to it, and I don't see one in the future. So
of the three, you're basically saying Reddit is the king of the social media platforms because it aggregates everything. It covers all bases.
Yeah, you see Team Liquid posts on there, you see Twitter posts on there, ESFI goes there.
Well, the only place I find Reddit, like, a lot of this is exclusive to StarCraft, though.
Yeah.
Like, when it comes to League of Legends, one of the things is, the Reddit forums are a lot more, or the Riot forums are a lot more active in terms of the user base. And furthermore, you just see the community sites as a whole and the in-game client of people actually playing together. I mean, one of the funny things about StarCraft is, I bet you if you look at the total amount of content written in a day about StarCraft, more of it is written outside of the game, including just chat, than in the game. Whether if you were to look at League of Legends, the chat in the game probably produces a large amount of actual time of people just typing about the content, just the stats.
That's very interesting.
Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
So just for me, it's that what we're really starting to see between the two games, and I know one being League of Legends is significantly larger than the other now, but I still feel like they're both starting to react to social media very differently. And the other thing is, the League of Legends subreddit is very anti-business now.
Yeah, I think StarCraft's going to go that way as well.
I think it will eventually, but the League of Legends subreddit, especially, is very anti-business. You know, like a lot of people have started coming out saying, you know, it's impossible to get themselves upvoted. They can't get their posts on the site because the mods ban them. If it's at all related to a community site or some group trying to make capital off of the post, they ban them. And I feel like there'll be a point in which StarCraft would go the same way, and the reason why we haven't seen that sooner is because of the decline of StarCraft as the powerhouse of esports recently. So there's a lot more liberty in its status, basically.
I would also say that in StarCraft you get a lot more hero worship and personalities having sway, like because it's a very individualistic esport. You know these players and you know them as the player. So they have a lot of clout, and then when they want to, you know, support a business for Total Biscuit, for example, if he wants to pump his team, all he has to do is put a post on Reddit, and it goes straight up to the top just because it's Total Biscuit. So I mean, I see that as not as much of a problem. Actually, Jeff, I remember in a podcast towards the early part, we predicted that, you know, I flat out stated that Reddit was either going to have to choose between allowing marketers and becoming oversaturated with marketing, or starting to ban business posts. And it looks like League of Legends in its
that was
we
did that the week before League of Legends had the whole issue with State of the League.
Yeah,
where they started banning State of the League posts.
Yeah, it looks as though since League of Legends has seen such explosive growth that they just hit that point before StarCraft. But
well, and I think, yeah, I think it's what I said that with StarCraft, everyone's sort of willing to let anything happen for the sake of trying to stabilize the community.
So yeah, is the League of Legends community more of like the whole sky is falling type of thing going on that happens in StarCraft, what seems on a couple of month basis at a time? Or
actually, League of Legends has been historically very powerful. People are pretty hopeful about where that's going.
Yeah, I would say the League of Legends community is a lot less. They're reactionary to certain things, but they seem to be a lot more. Well, I mean, they're at the top, and they know that, and they're comfortable in that position. And a lot of the people who are, it seems a lot of people who follow the scene are not as veteran in esports. Like they've come into esports more recently, so for them they don't know about, you know, like 2008 and 2006 and like sort of the great debacles of esports. So they decided to have that naive nature to them.
So that's very interesting to me that they're somewhat averse to businesses moving into the space. I mean, I understand it to a degree, but does that mean that they are just relying more on the more established brands that they've been used to from the start, like SoloMid.net?
For what?
For League of Legends.
No,
like
but
for their essentially, I guess, depending on what the businesses are trying to give them. I'm not too familiar with what certain. I mean, even is this just talking from like saying State of the League? Is this just a show someone's trying to promote?
Yeah, State of the League is a show that a very
prominent
League of Legends community person made. I guess it would now be almost 2 years ago, and it happened that he was friends with many significant people in League of Legends and decided that, you know, he had access to these people and people wanted to have access to them, so he started producing a show, and he has. I mean, I've spoken to him. He's a very nice guy. You know, we've spoken in a professional capacity, and he has just sort of been able to build a nice career for himself in esports, like a lot of people are trying to do, surrounding that role there. But basically, certain individuals and groups of people felt that his content was lacking for whatever reason, and expressed a feeling that their subreddit should be held to higher standard, and it was being saturated with advertisement, and that, you know, like not him, but like IGN shouldn't just be able to make all their up posts go to the top of the page, and that, you know, like
yeah, I saw that as well occur.
You know, like it should be about people posting interesting videos and people posting, you know, strategy guides, like, and this sort of stuff. Because the other thing is, in the League of Legends format, from a quote unquote esports perspective, but really a playing perspective only. People will log on to Dota or League of Legends, look up a guide, or before they play, have that guide open and play with that. very few people do that with builds in StarCraft.
It's hard. It's way harder to do in StarCraft because I'm just learning Dota 2, and it's so easy to go to dotafire.com, load up a hero build, has all of your items in front of you, all the abilities that you have to pick, and then you just go with there. Especially if you got 2 monitors, it's the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
StarCraft, you're doing 50 things at once on one screen. You don't have time to even listen to the song that's playing in the background. You just zone out of it. You just tune out, and there's no like clear-cut recipe
ladder
for
anxiety
StarCraft.
that's happening while you're doing this.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true
this
as well.
actually belies, I think, a much larger problem with StarCraft in general, and it's difficult to pick up
Yes.
when it comes to a new viewer. So, I mean, when somebody introduces you to a sport, and we come to this all the time on the podcast, is where's the ball? Like in StarCraft, what are you supposed to be paying attention to if you have no idea what's going on? What indicates to you if somebody is winning? How do you make StarCraft a spectator sport for non-players? It's nearly impossible. I mean, if you imagine you go to the bar to watch a game with to watch StarCraft with a friend. You've never seen StarCraft before. So if you watch it and immediately you have no idea what's going on at all, you're going to have a crappy time. And when it comes to something like watching StarCraft, your first impression of it is going to be arguably the most important game that you watch in terms of your own interest. If you're not paying attention, I mean, if you have a bad time during that period, it's just you're not going to want to go back. You're going to dismiss the whole thing as kind of silly professional gaming, and you're never going to watch again. I think StarCraft turns a lot of people off because it's just so difficult to watch if you don't know exactly what's going on.
That's definitely very true. And we do see, not only the StarCraft community struggle with that too, but people going from StarCraft to things like Dota, things like League of Legends, it can be somewhat confusing, especially because the whole MOBA genre is very new. This came from a custom game from Warcraft 3 that people have modded from games like Han to League of Legends to Dota 2. And, the interest is definitely there, and we're going to see a lot of people moving between the 2 games. We've already seen StarCraft 2 pros move to League of Legends. I know League of Legends pros swap between Dota 2 and that game as well. So very peculiar to see where the esports ecosystem will go. But in the terms of the social media, this is a very interesting point you bring up, that the League of Legends subreddit is now banning business-like advertisements or moving towards that type of strategy. And, things like Reddit are very good sources of free advertising for websites. I utilize it for SE2Links.com. I know posts go there for SE2Links.com, and people either upvote them. I get more hits in a day than I would on a normal day. And it's nice to see. But, the whole thing about marketing is that there's only so many free resources. And my question to you guys would be is, will marketing always cost businesses towards their bottom line? And if that's not the case, then what kind of strategies can businesses or individuals use to market their brand for free? And especially with things like this coming up with Reddit and League of Legends, what's the way to get around this, and what are the best strategies for them to do to prepare for what's going to happen in the future?
Isn't that the golden question, man? Like, marketing has always been an expense. It will always be an expense. Like, the way I look at my job on a day-to-day basis is that I have to justify my cost, and it's been historically difficult to track. Marketing, above all else, is extremely difficult. Like, if you want to attribute sales, it's easier in digital, but if you want to attribute sales to marketing, at least it used to be, you'd have to try and time what you're looking at when you publish the media, so whatever TV or radio you published back in the day, and you have to try to tie that back to the moment that you started selling more. It was a very, very difficult thing to do there, and there's entire studies around it. With digital, it's easier to track. Like, you can see where people are coming from and where they're going and so on. But we are still an expense. The fact of the matter is, free marketing is really, really hard to do, especially in esports. In fact, it's nearly impossible in esports. If you want, you either have to be friends with the right people, having somebody to back your product, whatever it is that you're selling, getting personalities on your site and tweeting about you, or you have to have a crap load of money. Is pretty much what it comes down to. Free marketing is very, 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 very challenging. It's doable. I mean, you can do a grassroots campaign. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be pretty much a full-time job. But if you want to get up there, you have to invest the money.
But you just touched on the real thing, is that it's not free marketing. In esports, we joke around about how esports is paid in Reddit karma nowadays. There's no real, no one makes money off this stuff. And, it's not free marketing. It's you have to put in the hour, you have to put in the labor, and is that labor worth the amount of hits you're going to get? Is that labor worth the amount of exposure you're going to increase? And are you better suited to spend X dollar in a capacity to make up for that, whereby in a method you can't do through free marketing? The problem is right now in esports that doesn't exist. There's no way to market for money. Like,
there's no grassroots. Period.
Yeah, there's no small scale marketing campaigns. Like, you can buy tournament advertising, but there's no like middle of the ground marketing. Like, that just doesn't exist. Like, you can't buy time on Twitch. You can't buy this sort of stuff. Like, you have to buy it through CVS, and the rates are really high and all this sort of stuff. So the point is, there's no middle class marketing, basically. And so a lot of people will sit around and talk about how, well, it's free marketing. You can do these marketing campaigns. What you're actually doing is you really need to analyze the time you spend doing this compared to the amount of actual revenue you're going to generate for yourself. Because chances are, most of the time, you're not actually generating enough revenue to compensate for the time you've invested. You're just generating like what you figure is enough, but it's not actually netting you anything.
That goes down to a micro scale as well. I mean, if you look at it on a much more personal basis, you have so many people who, if you try to ask them how to get into esports, they tell you have to work for free for a few years. But is it worth the amount of time you could be putting into any number of other things? Yeah. I mean, StarCraft is especially guilty of this. Is you have all of these people, all of these journalists, all of these professionals, all production people who seem like, well, I don't know about the production people since they're employed by the big tournaments by and large, but you have a lot of people working for free. And exactly what Jeff said comes down to that scale as well. They have to think personally about their own. I guess if you treat yourself personally like a business, you have to finally say, at what point am I going to stop investing my time and attention and effort into this and put it into something where people are actually ultimately going to pay me? I mean, yeah, you can work towards a job that you really care about, but there's no guarantee that you're going to get there. There's no guarantee that this industry is even going to be around. Like, yeah, it looks strong, but again, it's not really a sure thing, and you're not really. I mean, it feels like a lot of work goes unappreciated in terms of monetary gain, and then also, it's just it can be a really, really disheartening place to work because people just don't seem to be very interested in what anybody else is doing than the top 1%. So, at what point do you decide that's it? I'm done. I've got tons of other things that I could and should be doing and have neglected in order to get to where I am in esports. Personally, since I just kind of curate a website, nobody's going to pay me anyways. I just enjoy writing about marketing. But if I were out there fighting to be a journalist or fighting to be a production person or fighting to be an accountant or a finance guy, and I came up against deal after deal where nobody was paying me, I'd be gone. And esports loses a lot of professional talent due to this. I mean, on this post that I wrote, what esports needs is professional talent. It's the last post I wrote on the blog. There's a little graph that has a risk versus reward chart, and it's got a nice little ideal relationship that goes right up that you're going to get more reward for higher risk. Right now, esports is very high risk at very low potential reward if you think about the chances that you're actually going to get paid at some point. So it just doesn't make sense to work in esports. It really doesn't, and it's amazing that so many people have gotten as involved as they are.
Yeah, that's a good point. I definitely see that on a daily basis. And my question for you then would be, you mentioned there's a top 1%, but who is doing marketing right in the esports ecosystem, and why is that?
So for esports specifically, I would say Total Biscuit is doing a fantastic job, and this comes in light of the whole slasher, e.g. whatever drama. We said on the podcast, not taking sides on that at all. It's probably something I just want to touch on, but TB understood that stuff was going to get leaked, and he used that to his advantage to build more hype. I think that's and granted, he's already got a huge amount of clout. If I had to tell you who I think is doing marketing right, who's not already at the top, I would say absolutely nobody, because nobody can seem to figure out how to speak to the esports consumer. It's a ridiculously challenging thing to do, to talk to a demographic that is or part of a generation notoriously difficult for marketing, resistant to advertising, nearly impossible to talk to in any form of a suit, speaking metaphorically. nobody has figured it out yet. And it's a new industry. This is to be expected. But nobody wants to figure it out because nobody's getting paid. So
this is the pirate generation, of course. So even getting people to pay for some content is a very troubling thing for a lot of companies.
Yeah, and 99% of content out there is free. I mean, you could watch YouTube VODs for days, and then you could go watch the Twitch VODs. I mean, and then any number of streams which are always live. When you think about how difficult it is to produce written content in an industry where there's limitless free video content available at all times, it's remarkable that ESFI does as well as it does to begin with, because there's so much content out there. It is extremely difficult to get people's attention. I mean, if you think about it, let's say the average esports consumer has what, like 6 hours of free time a day, right? Assuming that they work full time. So if you take maybe 3 hours of that time and devote it to watching VODs, that's you're only going to get through maybe 6 to 8 games.
You will barely make a dent. Make a dent.
And so then you pile on top of that all of the reading that they have to do. They're probably going to want to cook dinner, maybe spend time with a loved one if they have a pet. It just, there's so time is so
little. They clearly don't have a significant other. They like esports. They only have a pet.
Ah, yes.
But point is,
and then most are ordering pizzas. They're not actually cooking for themselves.
Fair enough. I mean, my point still stands. It's like there's so limited attention and time, and to try to get a hold of that is nearly impossible when you have all of this free content. I mean, the Day 9 Daily is a fantastic show. On the big scale, Day 9 also does it well. The guy is everywhere. And not only is he in esports, he's making a name for himself everywhere. He does marketing right. Well, he knows how to deal with his personal brand. But the fact is, how do people build a brand in esports? It's strikingly difficult. It's nearly impossibly difficult.
Like you said, they need to either utilize the utilities like Reddit and the social sites, as you guys mentioned before, too, to try to leverage their positions in the community, or they just have to have a lot of money.
But having a lot of money doesn't get you the win. I mean, that's the one thing that we wanted to touch on is for a long time on the podcast, we have heralded EG as making a lot of very good decisions. And I'm not like, we'll go into this second point in a bit, but I'm not a huge fan of EG per se. And I'll explain what that means in a minute. But as like a business and a marketing standpoint, they have made brilliant decisions over and over again. The videos they produce for Kingston HyperX, the way in which all of their players just know how to wrap off their sponsors, the way in which they can just like they're always representing, they're always branding, and it's been so strong for so long doing that. And what's happened, we feel more recently there's kind of been a shift for them in terms of the quality, not the content that's coming out of their group seems to have been hurt recently. And I can't identify what it is, and I'm not of the impression that it's a player's been signed or so and such and such. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, it has been the Christmas season more or less the last 8 weeks that we've been experiencing content from them. Mm-hmm. But it had their branding has been hurt, but at the odd time, they're in the best position they've ever been in. They have 2 players in the GSL. They're in the Pro League right now. Like, they're in a great position as a team, but yet their branding overall in the North American scene has gone on the downhill. Now, going back to explaining my position of what we were saying with disliking them, because I feel like I need to clarify this, it's just that I don't believe in the concept of teams in StarCraft.
Yeah, me neither.
StarCraft is like tennis or golf.
Or MMA.
Or MMA.
Or boxing.
I don't think MMA is as good an example.
There's teams in MMA,
but you got 2 people in an arena duking it out.
Well, but in MMA there are teams, which is a good point. And that's why I don't always go with MMA. But it's more so that from the perspective of branding and sponsorship and representation in tennis and in golf, you have like this week, Roy McIlroy in golf. Like, I don't really follow golf, but I just happen to know this. Roy McIlroy in golf just signed a $200 million deal with Nike. He's the second person in the history of golf to sign a $200 million deal. The other one being Tiger Woods. Both of those deals being with Nike. So basically, they're part of Team Nike. And Nike announced this by putting out an ad with Roy McIlroy and Tiger Woods. But they have now gone out to clearly state that Roy McIlroy is targeting a different demographic. And they're not a team. These guys won't play together at an event. If they're paired during a tournament, it won't be talked about like it's a team fight and one of them's knocking the other one out. Like, that's not how it works, because it's not a team game. It's an individual sport. And sure, it's beneficial for Nike if they do play against each other and they get double the stage, but at the same time, if they're on separate tickets, it's just as good, because their logo is on TV for a longer period of time. But the fact of the matter is that team format doesn't function. And I think one of the big things in StarCraft that we need to see is a transition away from this team format, which exists because of a history of the need for that infrastructure to support players. And then we need to develop that infrastructure in the league side and an agency side to support the players to replace what the teams are doing. But the fact of the matter is that sure, the pro houses are beneficial in this sort of stuff, but that's where you get to the MMA. Those can be done in the form of camps. Those can be done in the form of tournament-specific training groups. It doesn't. The team setup doesn't make sense to me from an investment perspective. If I was looking at it, I would not want to invest in that, because the number one thing is, it appears fans follow players, not teams. You look at Stefano. Millennium didn't keep everyone who liked Stefano when he moved to EG. Their like notoriety drops because they follow Stefano, not Millennium.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about Millennium since Stefano was gone.
That's
exactly.
a great point.
And so, with that in mind, if you're a sponsor, you sponsor a team. That team has all your branding.
Yeah.
But when that player moves, all of that venture you've put in, all that capital you put up for that team, all that work goes to that player, but you get nothing for it. So why would you keep buying into that? And I've really struggled to understand why teams or why sponsors haven't pressured the teams to be like, I want you to act like an agency, not like a football team. You're just an agency, so I can get to your player. The best example of this is Grubby. There's a player who realized, like, hey, I could just be my own self because a team doesn't benefit me. I just need someone who will fly me and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've...
So is that how you view, is that how you see Axiom performing now? I mean, the way that they're treating their players, they're kind of letting it be almost a player-run team in that sense, where they're making a lot of their own decisions?
It really comes down to the structure. If they were to... If Axiom receives sponsors as Axiom, then they're a team. If Axiom essentially negotiates the deals for the players and takes a cut, then they're an agency. So what it comes down to is how they handle the money.
And I think on that same note, I think Axiom is making a lot of decisions that are more progressive than people realize in esports, and they're laying a lot of foundation for long-term change. One of the big things is, unlike the North American teams, which have North American players and Korean players, and they like pick up Korean players here and there, Axiom was just like, we want a team that wins. That means we get all Koreans.
Yeah,
We're not arbitrarily choosing North American players because we live in the United States. And I feel like that alone has proven a position on that. Furthermore, that they're a backed team. Axiom is backed by Total Biscuit and the Game Station brand. That means that if you look at I mean, for me, my background is a bit football, but kind of more hockey. If you look at like the start of the NHL in hockey at the turn of the last century, before they had a cap, the teams that won were these teams that were just backed by really wealthy people or groups of people because they just went out and bought the best players. And suddenly the team, in that sense, was the agency to get those players together. And obviously it's a team environment, it's not the exact same. But the point is that Axiom I think, is going to end up in that agency role, but in a very nice way, whereby they aren't repping sponsors yet. They have a sponsor which they're announcing, but they aren't repping sponsors yet because I think, by the way that they're framing it, those players are going to be directly representing those sponsors. And it won't be perfect because I don't think the players will have the contract directly with them. It'll have to go through Axiom. But the point is Axiom's laying a lot of this foundation, it would appear, for really progressive change in a team format. The problem is that 1% we talked about, the old boys club, is what the term we use a lot, which are the existing teams in the North American scene. and in the European scene are not going to accept that kind of change quickly, because players don't want to go it on their own. For a lot of players, their standalone performance isn't enough to maintain the brand. Their brand is part of a cohesive group on a team. Yeah. So, I don't want to name players in that, because I feel that's unfair to players who should be named that I wouldn't do, or players that have a greater warrant of being named. And I don't think stirring up that kind of shit is good. But the point being that there are players, and if you're a fan of esports, I'm sure some of them come to mind, who, if they were not on a team, would not be able to hold the same level of notoriety if they were just dependent on securing their own sponsors and performing on their own.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing, too, is you have a handful of people who do all of the winning who would get all of the sponsors. So, I mean, how do they publicize themselves when it's difficult to get them to win? But to address your point about EG falling off recently, I actually think I might have an idea. I obviously, this is completely off of the top of my head. But I actually was thinking the other day that it could be because they've secured a couple players who are actually performing well. Like recently, all they've had going before the acquisition of Stefano is all they had going was that brand, and they built that brand.
Well,
now
hold on.
they realized
was Thorzane, but he got ill. I mean, we shouldn't.
Right. Thorzane's great.
Idra had some showings. Like, Idra has had some very good tournaments in the latter part of 2012. He didn't win any.
But he wasn't winning.
But he did have good tournaments and good turnouts.
Yeah, but the point is that all they really had going was that brand. They were known for being these bad boys of esports. That's what they were known as. Now they see the opportunity to start being known as the first set of foreigners to take a Code S championship, at least possibly. So, I think they've shifted away from, or they're trying to shift away from being just a brand, which quite frankly, with the team discussion we just had, is unsustainable. And they're trying to move towards being a winning team. And so that has caused them to switch focus and lose attention to that branding, which would probably explain the loss of content coming from EG. Now, once again, that's just an idea. Everything else remains to be seen. But I think that might be where it's stemming from.
I kind of buy into that. But at the same time, that's a positive in reality. That they're
absolutely, it's a positive.
So, yeah.
I would like to see EG as more of a powerhouse than just a brand producing clever content.
Well, in light of recent events which have occurred in the past 24 hours, there's been some developments from the Evil Geniuses side where they've been really hit hard in the social media landscape. They've been getting
Reddit's going nuts on them.
Very negative press. People have a lot of very negative things to say about Alex Garfield, and he did go on a little bit of an emotional. I'm not going to call it a rant. I'm not going to call it a tirade. He just got very emotional in the heat of the moment, speaking with Slash about something he's very passionate about. And as a result, people have looked upon this in a negative fashion. Now, you talked about the positives of, esports building their team, building their brand. A lot of the positives of people like Grubby, who are building an individual sponsorship along the way, doing it for himself independently. Positive things like Axiom. Where does the negative and the positive, play a role in the long term of esports? And does the term "any press is good press" apply here to these situations?
No.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I really the thing
in
with
a small industry, no.
Yeah,
never.
And
it's the number one reason: non-endemic.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have enough money to appear as a bunch of squabbling children. Like, you might be able to pull it off if we were, let's say, the Vikings hiring a boat full of prostitutes. If you guys remember that from back in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
But,
I do.
But
it's a long time ago.
We just can't do it. Like, I gotta agree with Jeff on this, and he and I differ on a lot of points, but this is one I agree on. You can have bad press in this industry. You absolutely can. And, if you I guess it comes down to spin. You can spin it as much as possible to try to get an advantage out of bad press. But the fact of the matter is, if you have the community turning against you, in this day when esports says, "Oops, Bandit, hush."
It's okay. I can edit it out later.
Anyways, if you can keep it in. He's got a good radio voice.
Sweet.
But yeah, so if you, sorry, I lost my train of thought now. Shoot. Point is, yeah, you can have bad press. You absolutely can. It's not like all this negative attention that's going towards EG is going to help them, because the community is fickle and they're fast to turn. Not only that, but all of your personalities and all of your brand is more connected to the consumer now than it ever has been in history. So if they start to view you negatively, they can make it known, and they'll rally together and all get together on Reddit and start being pissed off at you. Will they forget it in a couple months? Yeah. But who knows what you had coming up in that couple months that you could have taken advantage of, and except for the fact that at the time you were not the favorite on Reddit.
And just to further clarify that back to like a business perspective, the reason why I say this is I've been in a pitch meeting for fantasy sports where we were securing our second round of seed funding, and we were talking about where the mainstays of communication. And I was like, well, Team Liquid and Reddit are sort of two of the big groups of this, and they went on Team Liquid and they sort of were looking around and they weren't familiar with it, but the person knew Reddit, so he went on Reddit and went to our StarCraft, and the top 10 posts, I think 6 of them were drama related.
Oh man!
And from the perspective of someone who's looking at this as an industry to invest in, which is what we are, and what everyone who's in this industry needs to understand, is that we're like the way to think of it is like esports needs to always have its game face on. Because we're so small in the grand scheme of things, we always need to be ready to be looked at by somebody.
Yeah, and not only that, but you think of the people who are looking at us. Like, if you were a big non-endemic who probably, let's guess here, if you're in charge of a sizable marketing budget, you're probably not a kid. Probably, I would say, above the age of at least 27, 28, probably older. So, and there's no guarantee that you're going to have any connection to gaming whatsoever. So we have to accept the fact that gaming does still carry a bit of a nerdy stigma.
Especially professional gaming.
Yeah, especially professional gaming. And when somebody looks at that, you're already at a disadvantage. So they come here and they see exactly, or they go to Reddit, they see exactly what they expect to see. A bunch of people bickering about something or another, or whatever the big drama is, and they go, oh, well, I was questionable about this to begin with, and now I'm definitely not going to invest. I would be curious to know exactly how much money we've lost because of something like that. Now, do I think it's a huge, ridiculous problem? No, probably not. But there are those opportunities that do get missed because we're not professional at all times. It sucks to see that, but when the personalities act out in that sort of a fashion, it really, really reflects poorly on all of us.
Well, I know you do have an article out there. It's just be nice in esports, I believe.
Yes, that was Jeff. That was
Jeff. My networking article. Yeah.
Yep, that was a good article as well. And like I said before, you guys got a lot of great articles on datamindout.com. It's a fantastic, clean website, very crisp. It looks like you guys do feature a lot of things on there very frequently. Your podcast, of course, that's a weekly thing that you guys do.
Yeah, it comes out every Friday morning.
There's a bit of a gap in December, but we sorted that out.
It's due to the holidays. We forgive you for it. But I had a question specifically for you guys and specifically for your plans for datamindout.com in 2013. What are you going to do? What's the next steps? Where are you guys going to take this? And what are your plans going forward?
I would love to get some more folks on the podcast, to be frank.
Well, we've had a guest every week for the last 4 weeks.
I want to get them booked up for the next 4, but
actually, I think we have 2 of the next 4 already booked.
Yeah, we do.
Good.
And then maybe one after that. But the point is, the thing with Data Mined Out is it's not like, I don't really plan on making a living out of it. It's probably just going to keep it's probably just going to keep going as it's going. Just because it's not really something that I'm going to monetize. I did it because I wanted. Jeff and I both did it because we wanted to provide business advice to companies in esports, since we want to see the scene grow. Let's be frank and selfish for a second here. I want to work in esports. I want to work in esports. I want to work in gaming. That's what I want to do, and I know Jeff feels the same way. So, for us, it's in our best interest to see the scene grow, and if we can offer our expertise to help, that's what we're going to do. So, in terms of big, amazing plans, I'm sure we'll come up with something, but for the time being, I just want to keep going as we're going and helping out the people who come to me. Which, by the way, if you are interested, or if you do want marketing advice from me for whatever reason, or you want biz dev help, feel free to shoot me an email on the contact form.
it doesn't. For some reason, it hasn't been notifying you that the email's been sent, but I assure you, I do receive them. And I'm happy to help out. We can offer whatever services that you need.
And we do that consulting on a sliding scale, where it's very much so like if you're a small up and coming company that doesn't have a lot, we very much so work around that budget. I mean,
yes.
We're very feeling that. But at the same time, we have done consulting for some larger firms, and obviously we are happy to continue doing that larger firm consulting because there's significantly larger paychecks attached to that.
Yes. Well, that's excellent because I'm sure many businesses in the landscape are probably a little lost right now. They're not really sure what to do.
Actually, such a trick.
I think the thing we should, we can talk about it. The reason why Data Mined Out was really the real reason why it was started was we were talking to a tier 1. I won't say the company, but we were talking to a tier 1 food and beverage company, and they were interested in getting into esports, and they just had a very preliminary couple conversations with us about it, and were very positive on us and what we had to say about it, all this sort of stuff. But then at the end of the day, we're like, we couldn't find any other resource in your industry that is effectively you guys, and we were kind of like, I guess you're right, and I wonder if there's an audience for this. And with the podcast, we've really found that they're people really care to look at it from this purely business perspective of
where's the ROI?
Yeah, where's the ROI? Where's the long term? What's the exit strategy? Look at the classic quintessential business questions of esports. And one of the things is, when stuff like the Slasher Alex Garfield event happens or some of the other drama that has occurred, we're really bad at brushing over it. And there's a lot of business stuff to be said about it, but we feel like the marketing discussion we had today about it, we didn't want to do that yesterday because we don't really want to go near that stuff. So we kind of have these really high-level discussions about business, looking down at it, and occasionally mention stuff that isn't really super dramatic. So we don't have great deep hooks in esports because we're not talking about what's the number one thing.
Yeah, I know.
Right
Everybody
now.
Wants to hear the fluff.
And it's true that everyone wants to hear the fluff, but it seems that the people who want to hear just the facts are the people who want to keep coming back every week and get really engaged and email us all the time and talk to us on Twitter and Skype, and we get into these big discussions about these long-term business developments and stuff. So it's been interesting. And on my point to 2013, there's some big announcements coming up that we can't say yet for Data Mined Out. My goal personally is I'd like by the end of the year for Data Mined Out to still be non-monetized and have the independence it has to make the rulings and positions it has on things and demonstration. But at the same time, I would like us to see... actually, no. If it's us or if it's somebody else, I don't really care who. I would like real business and marketing consulting occurring in esports. So companies are making decisions based on factual data and based on experience perspectives and targeting non-endemic money and targeting growth for the viewer base and trying to bridge those gaps in that capacity. And if it's us or if it's somebody else, I don't really give a shit as long as esports is getting bigger.
Yeah.
That's all I really care about.
Exactly.
Amen to that. But we're very grateful to have you guys in the community. I know just reading a couple of your articles, I'm just reading them and I'm saying to myself, okay, I'm doing this. Oh, I haven't thought of that yet. Let me see if I can implement this somewhere. And it's been a great resource for me so far, just finding it in the past 3 days. And I'm definitely looking forward to listening to your podcast in the future as well. So you guys said that people can find you and get in touch. What were the exact methods that they could follow you and get in touch with you? And just let the
Twitter,
people know.
At Data Mined Out is Tom, and then
That's
you
me.
can find me at it's Rivend, ITSRIVEND. And there's a contact form on Data Mined Out. You can just email us that. Otherwise,
/contact us.
yeah. So you can just send us if you want a comprehensive email. You can just hit us at the contact form from the main page, or you can just hit us up on Twitter, and we'll generally talk to you on that all day. And,
We love to talk. So, and
then you can also check out our other project, which is fantasysports.com, which is our fantasy website for StarCraft and League of Legends.
All right, excellent. Well, guys, you got any other final words you'd like to say to the viewers before we cut the roll
Jeff,
Well, thank you for
director's
having us
board,
on.
man. Hey, no problem, man. No
I'm
problem.
really glad you reached out. It's been a fun talk.
Yeah, it's good to see like-minded business people in the esports ecosystem who are sane and cool and are just have a level head and are able to look at things from a very balanced perspective, because things do get thrown disproportionately one way or the other on both ends of the positive and negative spectrum here, especially towards business and esports. So it's just good to have a discussion, a cool, level-headed discussion about this. And there's some really exciting things. Look, what I take from this is there's exciting things to come for esports, and as long as we just keep the boat steady and don't rock it too hard, we should be okay. But I'll let you guys have your last moment, since I kind of took the thunder there. But
My only thing is, clearly we didn't talk long enough if you think we're level-headed. So.
well, maybe in the future we can do another one of these, because I had a good time, and I hope you guys had a good time as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Thanks so much for having us on.
All right,
Don't hate the business people.
Yes.
That's the big thing. I feel like a lot of folks are wary of business people, but they're needed. We need professionals. If you're a production person, if you're an accountant, if you're a finance guy, if you're a marketer, it doesn't matter who you are. If you want to get involved and you're a professional, do it. And make yourself known, but don't do it for free.
Yep. And
that's the number one thing. People need to start demanding that they get paid coming up in this industry, because that's going to make it so that all the money isn't concentrated in not the wrong places, but isn't concentrated completely at the top.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, that's my big point.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much. And for our viewers, today will be yesterday tomorrow, so do it now. You heard it straight from Tom and Jeff here. And this is going to be Mark Sturmer, Doom Esports, signing off here for SCToolings.com and BaseTrade TV. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.